Afternoon. My name is Alvin Vidal Sanchez, and my presentation will be focusing on the perceptions of low-income communities of color, specifically looking at Rundberg Lane and how instances there can be tied into larger national trends and patterns of media misrepresentation and public misconception of low-income communities of color. I grew interested in this topic, one being new to Austin. I wasn't aware of any community development or organizing efforts beyond the three Austin case studies. I latched onto Rundberg because of the unique aspect of neighborhood revitalization through crime prevention advanced by the Austin Police Department, and I felt it tied in well with my larger general interest in media portrayal of low-income communities of color, which are highly negative generally. I'll be giving you some brief information on the Rundberg area just to get you acquainted to the neighborhood, and I'll be focusing the majority of the presentation on two themes: media representation and public perception, and then I'll end with some conclusions of my findings. Rundberg Lane, as you can see this image, is located in North Austin at the intersection of I-35 and US 183. Approximately 30% of the population is below the poverty level and 19% use food stamps. Reflecting the diversity of this area, 64% of the population speak a language other than English, and 30% of the population is below 18 years of age. Depending on where you are within the Rundberg area, unemployment ranges from 5% to 14%. Zooming in on the Rundberg area, you find that the southern boundary is comprised of US 183. Cameron Road and DeSalle Road make up the eastern boundary, while Breaker Lane and Kramer Lane make up the north, and the western boundary consists of Metric Boulevard and the railroad. Also looking at the aerial, you can see that the major arterials include I-35, Lamar, and finally Rundberg. The Restore Rundberg Initiative grant area comprises 5 distinct neighborhood planning areas, those being Naka, North Lamar, Windsor Hills, Heritage Hills, and Georgian Acres. The meetings for Restore Rundberg are heavily comprised of single-family white homeowners from the surrounding area, and there is a distinct lack of voice for the renter community as well as the immigrant community. The first theme I'll be tackling is media representation. Looking specifically at Rundberg Lane, you find that stories coming out of this area by the Austin American Statesman are generally negative and focus on the criminal aspect of the neighborhood, the types of crimes, the number of crimes, the criminal population of the area, and there's very few positive stories coming from the area, one being the Rundberg Running Man, who has attempted to offer a different portrayal of his community and offer a more positive spin to the generally negative portrayal by mainstream media. The images accompanying these stories are also highly negative. They focus on images of police presence, of criminal activity, of the physical deterioration of the space, and just generally offer a negative outlook for this community. Compared to images that could be being portrayed of a community organizing in response to this criminal activity, as well as local community efforts to reframe the debate and offer a positive spin on their community, and local efforts to better their physicality. The second theme I'll be looking at is public perceptions, specifically public perceptions or misperceptions of the poor, of people of color, and of affordable housing. Focusing first on the poor, the major debate is always between the deserving poor versus the undeserving poor, and what makes one deserving in the eyes of the public generally are issues that the family cannot readily fix despite their general intent. So families with children, if there's a family member with a disability, those who are unemployed but are actively searching for meaningful, gainful work, as well as full-time mothers are some of the characteristics that the public ascribes to deserving poor. Public perceptions of people of color are highly skewed by media representations of this community. People of color are overrepresented in images of poverty and criminal activity and are more likely to be seen as perpetrators. In one specific instance, African Americans are portrayed about 60% of the time in poverty images, while they make up about 30% of the poverty population. And finally, public perceptions of affordable housing we're all aware of. Their fears for changes in character, decrease in property values, and a strain on existing services due to density are all fears we've heard. And with all these public misconceptions of poor, people of color, and affordable housing, it makes it difficult for these communities to organize or develop to better their own situation when faced with these larger trends and patterns of public stereotyping and misportrayal. I found two causes for poverty that the public ascribes to, one being individual deficiencies and two being cultural belief systems. The first, individual deficiencies, essentially blames the victim and argues that their poverty is the result of their own poor life choices, and therefore to get out of poverty, one must simply make better choices and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. The second, cultural belief systems, is an extension of the idea of individual deficiencies, but ascribe this deficiency to a larger culture or subculture in the community. It's very much rooted in the culture of poverty concept by Oscar Lewis and Daniel Patrick Moynihan. It believes in the concept of a series of beliefs, values, and skills that have been honed generationally that result in an inferior culture that values dependency, poor work ethic, and poor attitude. Coming into this research project, I did have a series of expectations. One, I was not expecting a large voice from the immigrant community or the renter community, but the apparent absence of that voice entirely in the Restore Rundberg initiative was startling to me. With this research project, I would like to delve deeper into alternative media, looking at how communities of color and other disenfranchised and marginalized communities have responded to the misportrayal by mainstream media and how they attempt to reframe the debate and offer a more positive narrative of their communities. That concludes my presentation on the Rundberg Lane area. Thank you.